Back when I was in rehab before, like back in December, November in Prince George, I wasn't even strong enough to open the fridge door. It was a fight. It was always a fight. I used to try and find something like a fork or a spoon to stick in the door just to pop it open, right? Because it was impossible. It was impossible for me to open a jar. I couldn't pop off a Tupperware lid. Like I felt hopeless. I had tingling and numbness in my toes. And from there, it just gradually worked to the whole bottom of my feet. There was probably about a good month and a bit of the weird feet feeling. And then I started to get it in my fingertips. It seemed to get worse. So between work and my family, I was convinced to go to the doctors. And I went and saw my family practitioner in late August. At that first meeting, she was kind of shocked and kind of dumbfounded. No results came from any of the tests, so they sent me to internal medicine at the hospital. They gave me a simple, like a sobriety test. Easiest way to explain it, touch your nose, touch my finger, close your eyes. I closed my eyes, and it's a good thing he was prepared to catch me, because I just went, phew. So he said right off the bat, he goes, yeah, you have some form of neuropathy, so I'm going to have to send you to the local neurologist. So I went and saw the neurologist again. He did the same basic test, and then made an appointment for me to get a nerve conduction test. From the nerve conduction test, they concluded that I had GBS. So right away, they began me on the IVIG treatment. Towards the end of the week of getting the IVIG, I started feeling sick. Like I was throwing up at home and really worn out. Like it wore me to the point where I would spend a whole day in bed. And I was at home alone with my kids. My wife was at work. My parents had just gotten into town. So we were going to go out for dinner with my parents for my birthday. And I had a shower and I got dressed, which was all very daunting. I was extremely tired. And then when I sat down on the bed after, getting dressed and being a little winded, I had this tight feeling come all the way across me. So it kind of felt like there was a rope being tightened around me. So right away I went into panic mode. Dr. Google says, this can go respiratory. So with the fear of that, I made my way out to the living room and told the boys, I'm phoning Auntie. I'm going to get her to take me to the hospital. In the meantime, if I fall over or I stop breathing, you need to call 911. So we got to the hospital, and of course, you're there in a stretcher and you're waiting for hours on end. So it was about 4 hours, about 1 o'clock in the morning before they got me into a room. And I was really bad at that point because obviously I had fatigued myself that day. So they started an early session of IVIG while I was there the first night in the hospital. While I was in the hospital for 3 days, they decided to give me a lower lumbar puncture and check my spinal fluid. I asked if I could be discharged to go have Thanksgiving with my family, and I just had the worst headache that I've ever had in my life. I couldn't look at anything that had any bit of light to it. I couldn't listen to people speak, and my head was just pounding. So I spent Thanksgiving in a spare bedroom in the dark. So I was at home for a week, and things just progressively got worse. The following Sunday, I woke up in the morning and just told my wife, I said, I'm going to the hospital and I'm not coming back till I get better. That turned into a very long hospital stay. So I ended up being flown from Prince George to Vancouver. I was in VGH in the neurosciences ward. I went through the gamut of testing, and then they did an MRI. So the MRI confirmed CIDP. And of course, when they said it was CIDP, I'm like, what is that? Well, and they said it's chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. And I'm like, what? CIDP affects 1 in 100,000. My variant is on the severe scale, and it's like 1 in 4 million. So I won the disease lottery. They started me right away back on the IVIG. I was having occupational therapy come in, and I was having physiotherapy come in, and I just was getting to the point where I could hardly hold myself up in a walker. That made it change from IVIG doesn't work. Being neurofascia 155 made my body not respond to traditional treatments. So that's when they tried the rituximab on me. In a few weeks after taking the rituximab sessions, I started to feel stronger, not as fatigued, so I was able to perform better, especially in physiotherapy with sitting up, walking, standing, etc. So after they had finished all their testing with me at the VGH, I went back to Prince George and they put me in the rehab center there. So while I was in the rehab center, it was extremely difficult to accept where I was. And at this point, I'm crying in front of everybody. I'm in my mind, this is the end of the world. This is horrible. I wasn't meant to feel this way. And they eventually, said that, it's been brought to our attention that you're having some problems and there's probably some depression happening here. Would you like to try an antidepressant? So I said yes. Within a week, I was feeling better. I was able to concentrate, not have all these depressing, fleeting thoughts of, wasting away to nothing, and started to accept each day as it came. So that was a big part of this, was the acceptance. And it is. It's like the stages of grief. Continuing on, we're into October, November, December now. Things started to get worse. I started to fall. My first fall is slipping out of bed. Here's a guy, 180 pounds, on the ground, and I can't move. It took 3 nurses to get me up, and I'm embarrassed, I'm crying, it's the first time I've fallen. And eventually they had me on a Sabina, so it was like a sling that held you from the back, and you used your own legs to support yourself. And that's how it would go to and from a wheelchair, to bed, to the bathroom. So, it was the wheelchair shuffle. I never actually took a lot of showers because it was so fatiguing that I would just basically wheel my chair to the sink, wet a cloth, and just scrub myself with a cloth. It was the only thing I could do. And as time went on, it got increasingly more and more difficult. There wasn't me getting better. It just seemed like the more I did, the more damage it was doing. So I was air-vac'd back into Vancouver, back into VGH. Again, went through the gamut of testing all over again. I did 2 stints of plasmapheresis, so the plasma exchange. I then went from VGH, did a small stay in the UBC University Hospital until they were able to get me into GF Strong, which is the rehabilitation center. And there, they started from scratch with me, like a toddler, learning to walk, learning to move my hands, learning to do just about everything from scratch. And it was a long process. I was there until July. Spending my time in there, they got me on my feet. They reminded me to know how it felt to stand. My strength was getting better. My dexterity came back. And I was ready to go home. I had heard about the foundation my first month while I was in GF Strong, so around April of 2019. I started to do the peer-to-peer support meetings. And, I was the quiet guy at first and didn't say much. And eventually I really got involved, really talking, sharing the silly little things that bother you that you would never think that somebody else would understand, such as walking on carpet, trying to walk on grass. So it was nice being on those calls because you're not alone all of a sudden. All of a sudden, some of the things you're saying are actually kind of funny. It's like, yeah, me too. So weird, right? I never thought there was anybody else like me. So I found that really, really beneficial to me in spirit, in my adventure. It's not just my adventure. It's everybody that's with me. It's our adventure. Yeah, no, it is much easier to talk to somebody that has either been through or is going through what you've been through. Same experience. Do I get jealous of seeing people run and walk and, play? Oh, yeah, of course. Do I miss doing it? Yeah, of course. Do I have regrets? Definitely. I didn't dance with my wife enough. I didn't run more with my kids. All those little things that you take advantage of all the time or you neglect to do just because, I can do it tomorrow. The best part of my recovery and journey so far is getting closer with family, learning a lot about myself, knowing that there's other people out there that as much as you feel like it's the end of the world for you, people out there have it way worse. I spent a lot of time in the hospital, seen a lot of stuff. And I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate to be able to come this far. Be aware, we are rare, so please share.